Controversial political commentator Bill Maher teamed up with MSNBC host Joe Scarborough and pro-Kamala billionaire Mark Cuban to debunk the myths that Donald Trump wouldn't go after his political opponents and that he stands for free speech. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, the most recent episode of Real Time with Bill Maher was another good one. It featured MSNBC host and former Republican Congressman Joe Scarborough, as well as pro-Kamala Harris billionaire and Shark Tank host Mark Cuban. And there were many great segments, but one of the best ones was when Scarborough, Cuban, and Bill Maher teamed up to debunk the myths that Donald Trump did not go after his political opponents when he was president, and that he wouldn't go after his political opponents again if he becomes president again, as well as this idea that Donald Trump supports free speech. And Mark Cuban also takes a shot at Elon Musk as well. So we're going to get into this clip and then unpack it together.
The rhetoric has been awful for a very long time. But some of the stuff in the last week or so, the enemy from within, he's calling the people he doesn't like. I mean, he's done this before, enemy, not just adversary. Michael Flynn, who Michael Flynn is, he was the general. He was his national security advisor for about 3 weeks before he got canned for dealing with Russia. I know it's a hoax, wink, wink. No, it's not a hoax. He was asked by someone at an event, is there any chance that if Trump wins, you will get reinstated and sit at the head of a military tribunal to not only drain the swamp, but imprison the swamp, and in some cases, execute the swamp? And Michael Flynn could be back in his old job. And he said, well, he goes on, doesn't say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's crazy. He says, we win, and then Katie bar the door. Believe me, the gates of hell, my hell, will be unleashed. Now, I know what the Republicans say is, yeah, he talks like a fascist. He'd never really do it. He used to say he'd put Hillary in jail. Remember? Everything was lock her up. He didn't do it. He had 4 years he could have done it.
And I just want to say, before we go on, it's also worth noting that two of Donald Trump's former defense secretaries, James Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis, a Marine veteran and Marine legend, as well as Mark Esper, have both come out since and confirmed that they believe that Donald Trump is an authoritarian threat to democracy. James Mattis actually recently confirmed this as a consequence of comments that were made by former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under Donald Trump, Mark Milley. Mark Milley told Bob Woodward, who wrote a book called War, and during the course of the publication of that book, he told Woodward that he thinks that Trump is a fascist and the most dangerous person to America. And then after that information was revealed, General Mattis, Trump's former defense secretary, emailed Woodward to say he concurred with Milley's comments. So again, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under Trump, two former defense secretaries. This is insane. Imagine anybody saying that about a Democrat and what that would do to their political career.
That's not good enough for me.
He tried to do it. He went to two attorney generals, and both of them said, we have nothing to bring charges against him on. People don't remember 2 weeks before the election in 2020, he was pressuring Barr, his attorney general, to arrest Joe Biden. What drives me crazy is this past week, I don't want people to listen to me. I don't want them to listen to you. I don't want them to listen to anybody. I want them to listen to what Donald Trump says. And this past week, Donald Trump said that he was going to use the military and the National Guard to arrest his political opponents. He was asked if he would back off of that.
He said no.
And he said no. Yep. In fact, he doubled down. He talked about Nancy Pelosi being evil, her husband being evil, Schiff being evil, talking about arresting them. He said he was going to execute the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff because he was disloyal to him. He told another chief of staff who was a general, I wish my generals were like Hitler's generals.
It's the new season of The Sopranos. It's crazy. I mean, it really is. I mean,
but
And again, before we play, I just want to remind people of that particular segment. I'm so glad Joe Scarborough remembers this because sometimes I feel like I'm the only one who talks about it. But days before, weeks before the 2020 election, the sitting president of the United States, Donald Trump, publicly pressured his attorney general, Bill Barr, didn't just do it in private, did it publicly in front of millions upon millions of Americans when he called into Fox News on the Maria Bartiromo's show, and he said this.
Unless Bill Barr indicts these people for crimes, the greatest political crime in the history of our country, then we're going to get little satisfaction unless I win, and we'll just have to go, because I won't forget it. But these people should be indicted. This was the greatest political crime in the history of our country, and that includes Obama, and it includes Biden. These are.
So again, the sitting president of the United States publicly demanding that his attorney general prosecute not only a former president, Barack Obama, but also his current, at the time, his then presidential rival, Joe Biden, the former vice president. So I want you to think about that, because this is the same person who 4 years later says that it's not right to try to prosecute former presidents. Well, clearly Trump didn't believe that in 2020. He was thirsty, he was horny for his attorney general to prosecute Barack Obama. So any MAGA Republican who says, oh, there should be sweeping presidential immunity, you don't want presidents going after former presidents, it's like, well, your guy tried to do that. He failed, but he tried to, and you all didn't give a damn. Maria Bartiromo and MAGA Republicans weren't saying at the time, whoa, Mr. President, whoa, Mr. President Trump, we don't go after former presidents. No, they were baying for it. They were so happy. They were frothing at the mouth. Hell yeah, go after the Obamas. It doesn't matter if he's a former president or not. But 4 years later, their standard changes because they're unprincipled losers who are a part of a cult. All they care about is Donald Trump. So when it's Trump going after former presidents, it's okay. If it's somebody going after Trump, who is a former president, well, hang on. No, we can't do that. And then to say nothing of the fact that Scarborough was right. Weeks before an election, Trump was publicly demanding that his political opponent be prosecuted. Kamala Harris isn't doing that. Joe Biden didn't do that. The fact of the matter is that the Department of Justice, before they went after Donald Trump, bent over backwards to avoid prosecuting Donald Trump. If all he did was cooperate with the classified documents case, just turn over the damn documents, he wouldn't have been prosecuted for that. If he hadn't tried to overthrow a free and fair election with a fake electors plot, trying to defraud millions of Americans, and then fomenting an insurrection against the United States Capitol, he wouldn't be prosecuted for that either. But in no situation, in none of these situations, we have any evidence that President Biden publicly pressured the Justice Department to go after Trump. But Trump did pressure the Justice Department to go after his enemies. Once again, Donald Trump is objectively worse by every metric.
But people, you tell people this, and they go, oh, he didn't say that. You show them the clip, and then they go, he doesn't mean that.
He doesn't.
That's
mean and that's
that.
When they say you have Trump derangement syndrome. Right. And I would just like to say to my Republican friends, it's not deranged to fear this. No. It's not deranged to find this alarming.
No. If he says
it is, what?
I said, yeah, we're not saying this. We're not guessing what he's going to do. He's saying, no, this is what I'm going to do.
The Supreme Court decision.
I'm going to get Liz Cheney in a military tribunal. His people have said they're going to arrest my producers. He said he was going to shut down CBS because he didn't like how they edited a package in 60 minutes. He's out of control. His words.
So, why is...
It's unbelievable. No, because look at Elon. Elon is Mr. Free Speech, Free Speech, Free Speech on Twitter. And Donald says he's going to shut down CBS. He's going to shut down his enemies. Elon, not a fucking word.
Yeah, well, I mean...
That's important, too. Again, I'm so glad Scarborough and Cuban are able to make these points on such a big audience, and they're teaming up to do it, because this is something that is not talked about enough. Donald Trump proclaims to be a free speech advocate, that he leads the party of free speech. Elon Musk, who is now a Trump fanboy, openly cheerleading, openly endorsing him, openly trying to get him elected. He's actually camped out, apparently, in Pennsylvania, trying to lend his infrastructure to canvassing and door knocking on behalf of Trump. This is a so-called free speech absolutist, but he turns a blind eye every time, the dozens of times that Trump has threatened to prosecute or investigate or scrutinize using the powers of government, media that is critical to him. Joe Biden hasn't done that. Imagine, again, I use this example. Joe Biden would be eminently better justified going after Fox News than Donald Trump would be going after MSNBC. It'd probably be inappropriate no matter what, but I want you to think about it if we're just thinking about the merits of the case. Trump wants to prosecute 60 Minutes, CBS, MSNBC, CNN for simply criticizing him. Fake news, he calls it. But if you want to talk about fake news, Fox had to pay nearly $800 million in a settlement to Dominion Voting Systems because they spread fake news, because they defamed Dominion Voting Systems as part and parcel of Donald Trump's 2020 big lie. So the journalistic malpractice, the fake news, the dishonesty is infinitely greater on Fox than MSNBC and CNN combined. But Joe Biden hasn't come out and said, you know what, I think I'm going to go after Fox News. I think I'm going to prosecute Fox News. I mean, after all, they just had to pay nearly $1 billion because they're such Trump sycophants. They bent over backwards to defame this Dominion voting systems. They're spreading election lies. They're a threat to democracy. And we have the $800 million settlement to prove it, right? So there's a predicate here to investigate. But Joe Biden hasn't done that. Kamala Harris hasn't done that. And imagine if he did, how Elon Musk, Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, Matt Walsh, Tim Pool, and all the right-wing grifters would react. But they all turn a blind eye when Donald Trump threatens to do the same to critical media for infinitely less reason. Again, the standards, the hypocrisy, the moral inferiority of Donald Trump and MAGA politicians and MAGA influencers is on full display. And I'm glad that this is being pointed out. There's so much more to this panel. We'll probably do multiple videos about it. But again, great stuff by Maher and Scarborough and and Cuban. Cuban will probably be very offended the fact that I referred to him as Elon Musk. And these are people who, by the way, have much more centrist political views than myself. But when it comes to MAGA Republicans, Bill Maher, Joe Scarborough, and Mark Cuban are on the money for the most part. And given that the election is rapidly approaching, and this presents us with the opportunity to give the final brutal electoral repudiation of MAGA Republicans, we need to have all hands on deck. Great stuff. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.